yesterday's classroom recording, I have not uploaded it yet, okay, because it takes a lot of time to upload it on YouTube. That's the reason. So I'll just create a new project known as day 4, okay, and I will talk about object identification over here. Okay, now what is an object? Technically, everything on the web page is an object. Fine. On this web page, there is a text field, there is a button, there is a link. Okay. Technically, everything is known as an object. Okay. So how do you identify the objects? Right. You go to the page source of the application. You right click on the page and you'll see the option view page source. Okay. You go to the page source of the application and then you'll be able to see the source like this. Okay, it's the HTML code, and as I told you yesterday, you'll have to learn a little bit about HTML. Okay, before you actually work with Selenium, because Selenium works on this HTML code. Alright, in HTML there are tags and attributes. Fine. If I want to open multiple profile in same, you cannot. It doesn't make sense. In same instance of Firefox, how can you open multiple profile? You cannot. You can open one profile at a time. Okay. So in HTML language, right, there are tags and attributes. For example, span is a tag over here. Okay. The ID of this span is the attribute. Okay. This is a tag. Whatever is starting from this conical bracket is actually the tag name. Fine. Okay. Anchor A is a tag and href is the attribute for this tag. Alright. So in Selenium, we identify the elements with their tag names and attributes. Alright. Fine. So the thing is, every time you just cannot go to the page source to analyze the page source. Alright. There are various tools available in various browsers through which you can analyze your page source. Okay. For example, this is, hold on, I'll just tell you. Just go to the website google.com. Okay, and you need to add an add-on. Okay, right. No, you cannot open that, Varun. No, I did not change my window resolution. It's the same one. Right. The text of the page source looks small. I'll just increase it. Right. So you go to the Google, right, and in Firefox, I mean to say you open up Firefox and go to Google, and you need to download a plugin for Google. That plugin is known as Firebug. Okay, you just need to type over here Firefox Firebug. Fine, you will get the Firebug add-on for Mozilla Firefox. Okay, click on this and you will be taken to this URL. I'll give you the URL over the WebEx chat to everyone. You need to go to this URL. Fine. And you will have the button add to Firefox, add Firebug to your Firefox. Okay. If you have a little older version of Firefox, you can select an add-on over here and you can install it. Okay. You can go to any link out here, and for an older version of Firefox, you can install Firebug. You see that these buttons are enabled. Add to Firefox, you can add them. Right. Now Firebug, once you install, it will help you to analyze the page source of your page. Okay. You will see a small icon over here. This is the Firebug icon. Right. You click on this icon and you see this is Firebug. Okay. Under HTML tab, you will be able to see the HTML code of the page. Alright. How do you do in Chrome and I'll talk about it. Hold on just for a few minutes. Right. Now, there is this small arrow sign in Firebug. Okay. You need to click on this arrow sign and move your mouse over the elements, and it will highlight the page source of that element. Okay, it is similar to object spy in QTP, but not exactly. Fine, you click on this and move your mouse, suppose over this text field. This text field will be highlighted. Fine, so now I will analyze various HTML components and I'll tell you what each HTML component means. Okay, what each HTML component looks like. Right, for example, hold on, I'll go to the place where my project is going. I'm going to create a new Excel file. Okay, I'll name it as HTML objects.excel. Okay, right. Now, out here in this Excel file, I will make columns HTML element or element, tag name, mandatory attributes, and optional attributes. Okay, right. I have made 4 columns. Alright. Now, what are the various HTML elements or object types which are present on the page? Right. One is a link. Links are there, or text fields are there. Right. Buttons are there. Okay, normal submit button. Checkboxes are there. Radio buttons are there on a web page. Fine. There are links on the web page. Images are there. Normal text is present. Normal text which we read. Okay. A drop down. Right. These are the visible components which we see on a web page. Apart from them, there are other components which are invisible, like web tables, frames and all. I'll not talk about those. Okay, these are the visible components which everybody knows. Fine. Now every component has a tag name and set of mandatory and optional attributes. Okay, with the tag name and set of mandatory and optional attributes, you can recognize the element on the page. Let's take example of Gmail. Okay, right. For example, this is the email ID field of Gmail. Okay, if I investigate this email ID field, fine, this is the email ID field of Gmail. If I investigate the email ID field of Gmail, fine, then it's an input field with ID email. Okay, the tag name is input and there are many other attributes associated with this input tag. Fine. So in case of text field, the tag name is input. Okay. In case of a button, if you talk about any button, this is the next button. Right. This is the next button. For this button, the tag name is again input. Okay, right. And from my experience, I know that for checkbox and radio button also, right, the tag name is input. All the text fields, buttons, checkboxes and radio buttons on all the web pages will have the tag name as input tag. Okay. So what is different then? If the tag name is input for all of them, what is different? Look, for a text field, if I analyze the text field, okay, right, the type is email over here. The type attribute would be equals to email or text. In case of a text field, any text field, okay, type attribute will always be present. It's a mandatory attribute. Okay, the ID attribute over here is optional. It may be present or it may not be present. It doesn't matter. Okay, if you look at any other text field or any other web page, the ID might not be there, but the type will always be there. Okay, right. So the type is email, or sometimes the type is also equals to text. So the type attribute is there in case of text fields. In case of button, this is the next button. For next button, if I look at the next button in my Firebug, right, the type is submit. The type attribute is mandatory for a button and the value is always submit. In case of a checkbox, the type is always equals to checkbox, and in case of a radio button, the type is equal to radio. So the tag names for all of them are same, but the mandatory attributes, they vary. Okay, in case of a link, if you analyze any link, for example, I analyze the link, create account. Fine, I analyze the link, create account, and the link has the tag name A, anchor tag. Okay, right. So this anchor tag always has a mandatory attribute known as href. Okay, this href attribute points towards the URL which will open when you click on the link. It's there with all the links on all the web pages. Href attribute will always be present. Okay, it will point towards the link which will open when you click on the link, right? It will represent the URL which will open. Okay, so for a link, the tag name is always anchor and href is the mandatory attribute. Okay, in case of an image, right, for example, this is an image on the top. Okay, Google is an image on the top. No, it's a division. Hold on. Let me look at some image. It's not there on this page. Hold on. Suppose if I go to my website only, qtpselenium.com. Okay, and on our website, if I analyze my logo, then a logo is an image tag. Okay, right. For an image, the tag name is img, and source is the mandatory attribute. It points towards the URL from which the image is loading. Okay, right. So source attribute points towards the URL from which the image is loading. If I copy this URL and open it, you will see that this is the image. Fine. So in case of an image, the tag name is img, right, and just 1 minute, right. So in case of an image, the tag name is img and the mandatory attribute is source src, which actually points towards the location from which the image is loading. In case of text, the regular text on the page, okay, a text like hold on. a text like this: one account, all of Google, sign in to continue to Gmail, right? Normal text which is written on the page. There is no particular tag name. It can appear in H1, H2, H3 like that, or para tag, or div, or span. Okay, you cannot have a specific tag name for text. Okay, text can have any tag. You cannot generalize it. All right, a drop down, a drop down, a drop down. For example, in case of Gmail, this is a drop list. Fine. In case of Gmail, this is a drop list. If I analyze this drop list, right, then the tag name is select and there is no mandatory attribute. Okay, so the tag name is select for a drop down, but there is no mandatory attribute in case of a drop down, or in case of a text also, there is no mandatory attribute. Okay, now apart from these, there are some optional attributes which can or which may or may not be present. Okay, these optional attributes are ID, name, and class. Right, majority of the times we use these three attributes. They may or may not be present with an element. If an element has got an ID or a name, it becomes very easy to identify that element, because ID or name is supposed to be unique for an element. Okay, for example, if I talk about the Gmail page itself, if I analyze this text field, then this text field has got the ID as email. So identifying it becomes very, very easy. Okay, right. But if I talk about this text over here, one account, all of Google, it's an H1 tag. It's got no ID, no name, nothing. It's just a plain tag. That's it. So identifying this is not so easy. Okay. So what we do is that, right, what we do is that in Selenium, we give, if the element is having an ID, that is the best thing, or a name. Right, then to identify the element, it becomes very easy. If it's not having that, we use something known as XPaths or CSS selectors to identify the elements. Okay, right. So we'll see all of them and we'll see how we can identify the elements. Right, so let me make a class known as gmail.com. Okay, in the source folder, I'll make a class known as Gmail. We'll take a very simple example. Okay, not a very complicated one to start with. Okay, right. So, hold on, I'm coming over to it. Hold on. I'll open the browser, WebDriver, driver. Okay, let me add the jar files. I haven't added the jar files of Selenium. Okay, WebDriver driver equals to new Firefox driver, right? And you take the driver to the website http gmail.com. Fine. Okay, right. And in between, you also maximize the browser. driver.manage.window.maximize. This is the command to maximize the browser. Okay, you can maximize the browser with this command. Fine, and then you go to gmail.com. Fine. After going to gmail.com, you have to type in the email ID field. Okay. Alright. Now you have to recognize this email ID field. Email field. Fine. Look. If I analyze this field, as I said earlier, it's got an ID. If an element has an ID, it really becomes very easy to identify it. Fine. So to identify the element, you use the command driver dot find element. Find element command in Selenium WebDriver is used to find the first web element using the given method. Okay, look, let me open the documentation. Fine, let me open the Selenium documentation. And in the WebDriver interface on the left hand side, this is the WebDriver interface. Okay, right, these are the driver commands. Okay, right, find element is one of the command. It returns you, what it returns you? It returns the object reference of web element interface. Okay, interface web element in Selenium WebDriver represents a generic HTML component. Okay, all these elements which I talked about, okay, in a generic way, in Selenium we call them web elements. Everything on a web page is known as an object, and in Selenium technically we represent every element as a web element. If you know QTP, then don't confuse this with the web element in QTP. That is completely different. Okay, Selenium is a different tool. So web element represents a generic element on the page, any element on the page, and this is the interface, right? Web element. In this, you have got various functions which you can fire on a web element. For example, click on the element, clear the value of the element. Okay, get the location, get the size, get the text of the element, whether the element is being displayed, is enabled, is selected, right? So there are various functions available which can be fired on a generic element on the page. So when you write the command in Eclipse, driver.find element, it returns you the object reference of web element. I'll call it email. Okay, web element email equals to driver.find element. You have to import the web element class. Okay, import it from org.openqa.selenium. Every import should be from this package. Okay, right. Now driver.find element. Now how do I find element? By some criteria. Okay, if you go back to the documentation, right, then find element function returns you the web element, right, and it finds by some criteria. Okay, the criteria is specified by the by class. Fine, if you look at the by class, it's got various locator strategies. Okay, right, for example, by the ID, by the link text, by the name, partial link text, XPath is there, right, tag name. So there are various locator strategies, CSS selector. So we will talk about them, right? Okay, let's look at by ID. Fine, because our email ID field is having an ID. This is the email field, it's got an ID email. Fine. Okay, so what we'll do is that in our code we'll write over here by which criteria? By the ID email. So what Selenium will do is that it will go on the page, find the email field. Okay, you to represent the web element email, and in the email you have to type something. So you write the function email.send keys, say hello. Send keys function is used to type into an element. Okay, so you first extract the element, you extract the web element, and then you fire the operation on the web element. Okay, driver.findElement by the ID email will find the element on the page with this ID. So when you run this, okay, so what will happen is that a browser will open, right, and it will type the value hello inside the text field, right. Now yesterday I talked about Firefox profile. The reason I talked about was that sometimes your code fails. When it's running in the browser, your code fails, and you want to investigate the text field and the objects in the browser, right, in the browser which was opened by Selenium. This is the browser which is opened by Selenium. Okay, I cannot investigate the objects in this page. The reason being, I have no firebug in this. Okay, right, fine. So I can fix it by using the profile. I can create a Firefox profile, I can install Firebug in it, and then I can instruct Selenium to open that particular Firefox profile, so that when driver launches the browser, at least I have the Firebug in that profile, so that if something fails, I am able to investigate. Right. So that's why one of the reasons, like I told you Firefox profile in the beginning, that you can investigate the page. Right. Now another thing, if I give an ID which is not present, if I run this code, then you will see that I'll get an exception. And that exception is no such element exception. Unable to locate the element with this criteria. It clearly describes in the exception. So whenever an exception comes up, you have to read it properly. There are lots of exceptions. No such element exception, timeout exception, element not visible exception. Okay. You will come across all these things, but you have to look at the code carefully. Don't just think that, oh my god, something is going wrong, what have I done? You have to read the exception carefully. Okay, right. Another thing, if I want to run the same code on Chrome, look, the page source is same across all the browsers. Right, if ID of this field is email in Firefox, in Chrome also it will be email only. It's just that the browser is different, but the page source remains the same. Page source is the response from the server. There are hardly any websites which open differently in different browsers. Okay, right. I have hardly seen any website. What I have seen is that the page source remains the same across all the browsers. So even if if I create the object of Chrome driver over here, instead of Firefox driver, I create the object of Chrome driver, fine, and I run this code. So what will happen is that it will open Chrome and see, it will type the same thing in Chrome, and similarly with I as well. Okay, so the page source, as I told you, will remain same. If you want to investigate the objects in Chrome, you can do that. There is something known as Chrome Inspector. It is inbuilt in Chrome. You don't have to install it separately. Like you install Firebug separately, right? In Firefox. In Chrome, you don't need to install. There is something known as Chrome Inspector. Yeah, Brenda, is anybody having any questions? You can ask, you can chat, you can unmute yourself, ask the question. Anybody with any questions, right? Okay, feel free to ask questions. So in Chrome, you can investigate yeah.
I'm really sorry. So I'm not sure if I missed it or not. But for Chrome, what did you say? What can we install?
It is already installed. I'll show you. Okay. In Chrome, if you right click on any element, you get the option inspect element. Okay, when you click on this, you get a screen like this. This is known as a Chrome inspector. Okay, the element gets highlighted in this. Okay, right. So this is how you can investigate the element in Chrome. Right. No, profiling is not there, Nithal. Okay. So now this can also come up with F12 of keyboard. If you hit F12, Chrome Inspector will come up. Similarly, in I, there is I Inspector, I Developer Tools. If you hit F12 in I, they will also come up. But preferably, you can investigate the page very easily in Mozilla and run the same script on different browsers. Okay, right. Now another thing, driver.find element I am writing by the ID email. What if by chance there are 2 or 3 elements on the page with the same ID? Okay, at times you can have 2 or 3 elements on the page with the same ID. So how will you cater to that situation? Fine. Look, if you look at the documentation first of all, hold on. Yeah. Find element function. This is the find element function. It finds the first web element using the given method. Now what does this mean? Look, when Selenium scans the page to look for an element, it scans from the top right to the bottom left like this. Okay, so if an element is present with the same ID out here as well as out here, so Selenium will use the first one. It will ignore the second and the third one if by chance if the IDs are also same. What if you want to use the second or the third one? Right. Well, in that case, we will use something later on known as extracting multiple objects from the page. Okay, we'll extract all the objects from the page and then we'll see which one to use. Okay, we'll do that later on, but for time being, we are doing this. The driver.find element will find the first element on the page. Okay, right. Similarly, if I look at the next button, fine. Next button has got the ID next and the name sign in. Fine. Let me use the name this time. Okay. And I'll write over here web element button is equal to driver.find element by the ID sign in, right, and button dot click. Right. So sorry. Sign in was the name. I'll use by the name. So name is one of the parameters out here. Okay. So the name of the text field was sign in. I am using name to identify it right now. Okay. So when I run this code, so ID or name is the most preferred ones. Fine. See, I investigated on Firebug and I'm running it on Chrome and it runs, right, and it tries to submit and you get the error message as well. Google doesn't recognize this email, right? Okay, right. So now every element you have to recognize. You are writing 2 lines for that. You can also simply write in 1 line. Okay, there is no need to write 2 lines to identify and interact with every web element. Okay, for this you can simply write driver.find element by the ID email, fine, dot send keys. Okay, you can type anything. Look, execution starts from the left side to the right side. First, driver.find element would be executed. The web element would be extracted, and on that send keys function is fired. Okay, so you can write in one line as well. This will on the fly, this will represent the web element. Okay, and similarly for clicking also you can write dot click. Okay, right? So I hope you got my point. Fine. Now moving ahead. Okay, moving ahead. Now every element can't have an ID or a name. We all know that. Okay, every element cannot have an ID or a name. So how do we recognize the elements which have no ID or names? For example, the text over here, as I told you earlier, one account, all of Google, it's got no ID or name, nothing, it's just a plain H1 tag. So we use something known as XPath out here or CSS selectors, right? So what is an XPath or a CSS selector? Let's talk about XPath first. Okay, right. I'll just open a notepad. Fine, let's talk about XPaths. XPaths are of two types. One is known as the complete or absolute XPath, or one is known as the partial XPath. Okay, XPath is like the address of the element on the web page. For example, every one of you has an address, right? A postal address, which recognizes you or which tells that where you live, right? Similarly, XPath is like the address of the element on the web page. Okay, right. If I investigate this text, one account, all of Google in my source code, right, and if I look at the source code, then very clearly, hold on, listen to this carefully. Okay, this is the base tag HTML. This is the root tag. Everything starts from here. Okay, HTML code is like XML. Okay, it's got tags. It's an XML rather in itself only, right? And the final H1 tag is out here. So to make a complete XPath, I'll talk about complete XPaths first. You have to traverse from HTML till the H1 tag, right? So the first tag is HTML tag, right? So in my notepad, I'll just write over here HTML. Fine. After the HTML tag, there are two tags, head and body. The H1 tag is actually present inside the body tag. Okay, so you don't need to go inside the head tag, you need to go inside the body tag. So you will write over here /body. Fine. And inside the body tag, you have got this division tag. Okay, this division tag has the H1 tag, right? So you will write /division. Okay, right. Now in this division tag, there are three parallel division tags. Okay, this is the division tag till which we have reached till this division. This division has got three parallel division tags. I am interested in the second one. Okay, because the second one holds the H1 tag, right? So I will write over here /div2. So if you have to specifically go inside some parallel components, you can give the number, right? If I don't give any number, by default it will go into 1. Okay, 1 is the default. So you have to give the number 2 over here to make sure that it goes into the second one. Okay, right. After going into the second one, you have, this is the second one, we have reached till this place. Okay, you have got another division tag, right? So you will write /div, and under that, okay, under that you have the h1 tag, right? So you can write /h1. So this is the absolute XPath of the text. The text is present inside this h1 tag. Okay, so you can use this complete or absolute XPath to recognize the text. If I copy this, go to my code and write over here driver dot find element by the XPath. You will get the XPath option and give this XPath. This will find the text. This will give you the web element. Okay, on the web element you have to fire the function dot get text. Get text function on a web element will get you the text of the element. Okay, so you can write over here text equals to this and print the text. Fine. So when you run this code, it will run. And it will see it's given the error over here, and in the output you see that it's printed the text from the XPath. But absolute XPaths are discouraged. You should not use absolute XPaths. Okay, complete or absolute XPaths you should not be using. Can anybody tell me why you should not be using complete or absolute XPath? What is the problem with this? It's not advisable to use this kind of an XPath. Although it's very accurate, it starts from the base of the document and goes till the element. At times when nothing works, I'll talk about the partial XPath later on. At times partial XPaths, they don't work. When you use the complete XPath, it starts working perfectly fine. Yes. What if the page design changes? Say I have got all the XPaths of my application like this, and the developer by chance he puts up one more component over here. So all the XPaths of my application will change. So maintenance will become really tough. Okay, so complete XPaths are discouraged. If the application changes, then there is a very high possibility that your XPaths will change. Okay, although very accurate, but very you can say risk. It's a risk to use them, right? Fine. So what we do is that we use the partial XPaths. Fine. Now before I come over to partial XPaths, there is an add-on which you can install. Okay, right. Yeah, that's what. If something changes on the page, then the possibilities are high that they'll change. Right. Now in Firefox, there is an add-on known as FirePath. Okay, right. Just go to Google. Make sure you are opening in Firefox and make sure that Firebug is installed. Okay, FirePath, I already have it installed with me. Okay, it's an add-on which gets installed on top of Firebug. Okay, so make sure you open Firefox. Your Firefox should have Firebug, and then you type over here Firebug path. Okay, so you need to install the add-on FirePath. Okay, this FirePath add-on, you add it to Firefox. Your Firefox will restart, and you will see the FirePath option out here. Okay, in this option, click on the drop down and select the option generate absolute XPath. When you select it, fine, and you move your mouse anywhere on the page, it will give you the absolute XPath of that element. So you don't have to calculate it manually like I did. Okay, you can just move your mouse over any element and you will get the XPath, the absolute XPath. But as I told you, absolute XPath, the usage is discouraged, right? What we use is the partial XPath. Okay, right. So partial XPath always starts with a double slash. Okay, right. For example, looking at the Gmail page itself, okay, if I look at my email ID field, fine, it's an input tag, right? In my fire path, I will uncheck the option generate absolute XPath. Okay, if I look at the email ID field, fine, it's an input tag, and this is the partial XPath which I get. Double slash star ID is email. That means any element on the page whose ID is email, you have to write @ID. Okay, you have to write @ID, or you can also write double slash. Instead of star, you can give the tag name that there is an input field, right, whose ID is email. Fine. So this is how you make the partial XPaths. Alright. So you need to uncheck the generate absolute XPath option, and you just need to move your mouse to the element for whom you need to get the XPath. Okay. Right. And you get the partial XPath. Okay. Anybody with any questions? Anybody with any questions? What if there are multiple email fields in the screen? How will the XPath? Look, if there are multiple fields on the screen, every field has a different ID, it's okay. But if every field has got the same ID, then the one which is encountered first will be utilized. Okay? The one which is encountered first will be utilized. Right? So, look, the thing is, when we use XPaths, we make practically Firebug is there, Firepath is there, they will give you the XPaths. But when we work practically, we get our own XPaths, we make our own XPaths. That's what I have seen. We don't rely on Firebug or Firepath and all. Okay, right. I'm going to stop for today. Okay, I think